Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another Smite Joust today video. I am Cosmos, your host, and today we are going to be talking about how to build hunters in Joust. You're wondering who I am, what my credibility is. Like, you've been living under a rock and you have no idea what's going on in Joust these days. Uh, I am a previous GM for many, many seasons, every single season in the past. Currently GM right now. Of course. Oh god, that was almost terrible. The most recent big Joust tournament that happened, I teamed with infamous Jesse and Shinigami, aka Pringles, and we took home the crown, the $3,000 prize pool. So pretty knowledgeable on Joust metas, especially in its current state. So we're gonna be talking hunters today, uh, which is a pretty simple class. A little bit simpler than the warrior builds that we talked about the other day. Check out that video if you haven't already and you're interested in building warriors. But, sorry, Nat. We won't be doing that. We're going to talk about hunters, like I was saying. So hunters are a lot different from most of the other classes in the game because they only really have, like, two builds. So warriors, I had like, the thieves build, the mystical build, every other yada yada. Some guys have this like special build. Like hunters, they don't really have much of that. They're kind of very set in what they do. They burst target. They find one guy and they kill him. And so you itemize to just do that exact thing. Uh, so of course, there are different ways to build them still, not just one hunter build. But typically, it's just a auto attack hunter build, which we're gonna go over. Hi, Misty. You guys can't even see her. Well, you kind of can. Yeah, there she is. Got her by the tail. And we got the ability hunter build. So we'll be going over both of those builds here in excruciating amounts of detail. Well, maybe not excruciating, but we're gonna talk about them and all the little caveats, nuance, and cool little things that you can do with both builds. I think we're going to start here with the auto attack hunter build as we adjust the camera to look at Misty closer. Hi guys. Everyone say hi to the cat. Very professional. All right. So, like I said, let's talk about auto attack hunters. We're going to go straight into the Ullr. That's our poster child here. Before we do, I will talk about all the characters that can use this build, which is basically all of them. Every single hunter in this build or in this category can use an auto attack build and do it relatively well. Some better than others, for sure. It's much better to go like ability on like Ullr or Marty, but pretty much every single hunter can use the auto attack build. Your preferred hunters, I suppose, which is basically just removing out the ability ones, are probably stuff like Newt. You can do it on. AMC does very well on her. Apollo, Artemis, Kernos, Charybdis, Chernabog, Chiron, wow, I'm naming them all. Cupid, Danza, Hachi, Heimdall, Hou-Yi, Ishtar, Izanami, Jingwei, skip over Marty, Medusa. Neith is a weird one. She can use both, but she can definitely use this build well. Rom, Skadi we can skip over, Ullr we can skip over, and X-Ball is a auto attack hunter for the most part. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. So back to it with on her. First off, we're going to talk about what you're going to start on this guy. So the idea here in Joust is typically you're against a double front line. And so because hunters are typically a class that take a longer to scale, they really need those items to come online. What you're looking to do is just get as much shred onto the tanks as possible, because like we were talking about at the start of the video, hunters are looking to shred down one target quickly and as best they can and burst them. And they're very, very good at doing that, particularly with more items when they get like the chin size type of things going for their tank shred. So the whole idea behind these builds, and the reason why there are barely any items in here, is because these are just the best items to kill that one target, while also maintaining some safety for yourself. So how we're going to look here is we're just going to rush straight into a dominance is our first item. Going leather cowl and dominance T1 Morningstar, along with 3 health pots and 1 multi. Typically, you don't need to do like less health pots and more multi, though you could. You could do 3 or a 2-2 split if you're not comfortable with the 3-1. But as a hunter, you're typically using auto attacks mainly to clear, right? Just using like 1 ability, sometimes 2, depending on who you are. And you're going to have that blue buff, AoE. You're not going to be the one holding it, probably. But that blue buff should make your health sustain much nicer to have than your mana sustain, just because, you know, you have the mana sustain from your teammate. Little thing to note that you could flex with this build is you could pick one of these other 2 starters here. Death's Toll, the really solid starter right now. I think it's pretty similar to Cal. You eventually upgrade it to Death's Temper on most gods. There's some characters can use the Death's Embrace, like Neith or Shibalanke, and use this build or that really well. But Death's Temper is a very, very strong starter right now. When you get max stacks on that, you get 35% increased auto attack damage. So really strong effect. I've been testing out a build where I go like Silver Branch or this, and I've been hitting like 500 damage base auto attacks, like no crits. Pretty devious. But the standard one is going to be your Leather Cowl. It's just the most consistent starter out of all of them. But I will talk about like the Death's Toll like I just did, and the other starter that you could go is a Gilded Arrow, which is incredibly weak in comparison to the other 2 in the early game. When you buy this item, you're playing for level 20. In Joust, it's almost never the right call to play for level 20. Because Joust is a very fast-paced game mode. It rewards aggression and playing quickly, playing together, and winning fights early and often and getting pressure around buffs so that you can pull ahead. The XP differential gets quite devious quite quickly if you're not getting those neutral camps. You'll start getting early level leads on you. And especially if you die, it gets bad. But I digress. The idea is you want as early pressure as possible, and Leather Cowl is the best for that. Death's Toll, like close second, both giving a decent chunk of power, whereas Gilded Arrow isn't offering you that much early, and you're playing for that level 20 spike. Which you can do, but like I said, don't recommend it. It would just replace the Leather Cowl here. So we're just talking about the standard build. So the rest of this build goes, you get Dominance for that early pen, as much damage as possible onto those tanks, and then you're just building for Shred. So depending on what you're against, you could either go Chin Size or Executioner first. Like if you're against a really high health target, like a Kulu-Ult, for example, or they picked Ymir for whatever reason, then your tank Shred will be very viable. If they go like Jing Chen and he builds Stone of Gaia first item or something, you're probably going to want to get Chin Size second. Dominance doesn't increase your Chin Size damage, but your Chin Size, just raw no pen damage will be slapping if they have the proper amounts of health. So you could go Chin Size second here, and it'll be hitting for like, 15 to 25, depending on how much health they built. Or you could just go the safer, normal Executioner route. So it's up to you which way you go. But to maximize tank Shred, this is the core build that we're looking at. And then after that, it's up to you. You pick 2 out of the 3 items from down here. If you really want Sustain, you can go Aussie. If you really just want more tank Shred, you can go Titan's Bane. If you're getting beat down and you're in your base and you need to clear fire minions and you're the only good source of clear, you might want to get Oboe. Or if you're in the opposite scenario and you're pushing down the Titan and you're just trying to get as much damage out on that thing as possible, once again, Oboe is another really, really solid option for pushing into the Titan room, clearing waves without using abilities, getting poke on the Titan, as well as hitting the opponents with that Odysseus bow proc. And the only other thing to talk about is this health chalice, which I put in the core section here. You may notice you want to get this thing as soon as it is convenient. So the earliest I would buy it is if you back before red, and you can upgrade this to T2 and buy a chalice. So chances are you're not going to have that opportunity. Typically, my advice with chalice is you want to finish your first item and then get a chalice. But realistically in Joust, where it's so poke-based, the game mode, you just want to get this chalice of healing just as soon as you can. So like once you have 300 free gold on any back, you just want to pick this up because it just does so much for your ability to stay in lane. And because you're focusing so hard on tank shred, you have barely any lifesteal, right? You just have leather cowl. You either have leather cowl or you want death's toll, right? If you want the gilded arrow route, you're gonna be screwed. But you want to get this thing ASAP, is what I'm trying to say. The only other caveats to this build, there are a couple that we're going to talk about. We just went over like the main thing. Like if you're just here for like a standard hunter build, you know everything you need to know. It's just this, and then choose from 2 of these. Usually ends up being like this. Lifesteal is probably the most comfortable one, and then you just get one of the other ones. Just better tank shred and better wave clear, poke, blah 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 blah. So yeah, if you're just here for that, that's the build. But there are a couple of caveats we could talk about. First one being what am I saying? If you're against a double squishy backline, which is probably not going to be the most common thing, but if you are, then it is preferred if you can get a little bit more sustain in your build, because double squishy backlines are typically trading blows a lot more from range. And so instead of rushing Morningstar, you could rush Aussie. And rushing the Dom after. So you could just go Aussie, and then you get these 3 items. That's the only thing that changes. It's just the order, really, that changes. The items pretty much always stay the same. There are a few, like, different options we can talk about that you could go. But it's really up to you. It just depends on what the layout of the game is and how you feel you're going to be able to play. Like I said, the standard is just this. But for against double squishy, you can rush lifesteal and then go something like this. Or just whatever order you're feeling like. If you really feel like you're not hitting the tank that much, you go this. But it's just the order. All the items are still the same. Like I said, there are a few other items that we didn't talk about that you could go, like Griffin Wing, which I personally think you should never go. But if you do, you should start with T2 Griffin Wing. Do it like this, and grab 2 health, 2 multi, or 3 health, 1 multi. I think 3 health, 1 multi makes more sense because they're mana sustain on this guy. And your build would just be this. You finish this into Griffin Wing ASAP, and then you build as normal. You still get a starter item, blah, 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 blah. So that's the Griffin Wing story. Don't think you should ever use it, but you can do it. Other items to talk about. A Silver Branch. If you're a stim character, the Silver Branch can replace your Titan's Bane usually in a build. So like, let's say I'm playing Muzen Cobb, and I'm going, you know, I've got Shred. I could build Silver Branch late in my build, like right around here. Or I could swap this and do that for maximum tank shred. And if my tanks have like Talisman, they've got Shoguns, I've got a Fafnir, I've got, you know, Entangling Wings. What it's called, right? Sprint. The root sprint. To give me attack speed. Like, I will be chunking with this Silver Branch. It also makes a good case to not go Leather Cowl. Instead, you could go that Death's Toll that we were talking about earlier and turn that into a Death's Temper to get that synergy between the extra power from Silver Branch and the scaled up auto attack damage from Death's Temper. So I do this build on AMC. Do Dom Rush with Death's Toll. And then I just build it out like this. And my auto attacks start hitting for like 500 in the late game. So very, very powerful build. I've got 38 Silver Branch stacks out of 40 without having any attack speed boost for my team using this build. So they throw a Midgardian on, but you have a Shoguns to counter, you'll still be maximum Silver Branch stacks. TOP. But other than that, the Hunter build, just for the auto attack Hunter, it's pretty standard. Pretty easy. I don't think there are, let me just take a quick look. If there are any other items that we forgot to go over are nice to touch on. I guess we could talk about crit a little bit here, and then we'll talk about glyphs. So if you're going to go the crit route, I don't recommend it. But there are 3 crit items that you can look at to go for if you're going to go crit. So if you go crit, you have to buy Deathbringer pretty much, because it's just the best item to go with crit. And then typically you want one of these 2. And they're kind of similar in strength right now, so you can kind of choose whether you want Bladed Boomerang for like more sustained fights where you're getting a lot of hits off and getting a lot of Boomerang procs. Or if you want to play for the Demon Blade, just have that initial pen. And it really is up to you. They're very similar strength right now. But if you're going to go crit build, you're going to buy Deathbringer, and you're going to buy one of these, and you're probably going to buy the one of these first. And you'd build them later in the build, of course. You'd build like Dominance. Let's say you did an Aussie Rush, for example. You went Aussie, like you're against double carry is probably the most common time you'd use a build like this. So you go Aussie, then you go either Dom or Xe, and then you can either go one of these first two crit items, or you can go Xe for the safety, and then you go double crit here. That's what that build would usually look like. Or like this. And so that's all we really got to say for crit. Crit isn't exactly the strongest build path right now, but it is a possible build path. It's not like unbuildable, so we will touch on it just barely there. And the only thing we have to talk about now is glyphs. So the two glyph choices that we're going to be talking about would be the Executioner glyph choice. Got it? This guy. And then the Deathbringer glyph choice. So, Executioner glyph choice. If they've got any kind of healing, if they've got a decent amount of healing, I should say. If they have any kind of healing, you might not need to go it. But if they've got a decent chunk of healing, if they built like 3 shells, you know, they got an Odin, they got a Geb, Envenomed Executioner is almost always your play. Unless you have someone else on your team that's building it. Then it is very, very nice to go Ferocious Executioner. Because as we talked about at the beginning of the Hunter thing here, the whole point of the Hunter is to kill one guy really fast. And a lot of the time, because you're only hitting like one guy, you don't really care about the anti-heal, about the anti-shield from the green Xe. You just want to kill that guy fast. The Ferocious Executioner is the best thing for isolating one target and just exploding him. So if you go like a AMC build, like the one I was just talking about, with the Silver Branch and stuff, and I was hitting like 500 damage autos, this red Xe could scale that up to 600 real fast. Your chin size will hit harder too. Like, let's say you're playing like Ho Yi with a build like this, your 2 is scaling up your damage, and so is this. Like, you're going to destroy people very quickly with this build, to the point where even if they're like Geb shielding, double shelling, E-shell ulting him, like, it might just be better to have this. Just because you'll kill him so fast. So, they really do need to have an exorbitant amount of healing and shielding for you to want to buy the green Xe. So, you just got to play it by ear, really. It's a tough call. It's very game situational. I'd say more often than not, you want to go this, but there are other games where you should go this. And that's kind of a gameplay call that you have to make. And the only other thing about that is when you buy it, I'd say the earliest you should buy it would be around, like, once you finish your core here. You could buy it before you finish chin size if you're snowballing or you really just need to make a play, because you're behind and you're just trying to like kill somebody real fast. But generally speaking, you finish your Xe right around this point, whichever one you go. And then for the Deathbringers, typically you're always going to go this one just for the extra crit chance, even if it doesn't give you the second passive on the Deathbringer, just because it's nice to have the extra crit. And then Malicious Deathbringers, if you're like really good with the CDs, resetting, like Onher could use this, Hoi could use this, and Newt can use this, but typically this is more of a like a crit assassin type of item, because they just use the cooldowns better normally, and you just want to auto attack as hard as possible and get as many crits out as possible on the hunters, so you usually go devoted Deathbringer. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the building there. Relics, it's a carry character. The safest thing you can do is go beads and Aegis. Shards, real quick. Wing Shard is pretty much always the play, especially after the recent Wing Shard buff. You could go Golden Shard, up to you, but it's pretty much always Wing Shard on these guys. You could switch out some of these relics, or change out a relic. Usually Aegis is the one that's going to go if you want to go something else. So it's usually beads first, and then depending on what you're against, like if you are Medusa against Odin, you might want to go Shell for yourself. But you can get really creative with these Hunter relics, because, like we said, your job is to just kill one guy. And so if you don't feel a lot of pressure on yourself to the point where you feel like you got to go Beads Aegis, it is very, very nice for both you and your team if you can get a little creative and like throw a blink in there if you're feeling comfortable. Only if you're feeling comfortable, though. Beads and Aegis is always a safe, good, easy, don't need to think about anything else play as a hunter. But you can, like I said, get creative. You could build the Bracer. Like, if you're literally just playing like a weave game and you're only hitting people like 10% of the time when team fights are going on, just because you're just watching your tanks trade back and forth type of thing, and like you just want to play off of just having extra movement speed and no one on your front line thought to pick this up, or they didn't have room for it or whatever. So it is nice to get creative with these guys. You could build sprint if they have a lot of slows, like the guy closing gap on you is like an Osiris or something. Like you're just 1v1 in an Osiris. Like having Aegis probably isn't the play. Like it's basically like if you feel like you're playing duel type of thing. Like if you're either just diving the backliner or you're just fighting one tank in the back, it's probably better for you to not have Aegis and to have like a different relic. Like I said, like it's basically you're just playing duel against somebody. Because then horrific becomes a lot better. Like in duel you hardly ever see Aegis, right? You might see beads, but to win 1v1s, other relics become a lot more prominent. And so, yeah, up to you if you pick up any of these other options. But like I said, typically, safest play, just beats Aegis. And then I guess we can talk about, just briefly, consumables. 500 pots are very good, and 3k pots are even better. Pick up 500 pots if you're snowballing, or if you really need to make a comeback, like your Phoenix just died early on in the game, or they just got Bull Demon King, they're about to push your tower down, but you're like, maybe we can win a fight, and if I get a 500 pot, that could help. You could flip a 500 pot anytime when you're feeling like maybe you just need like a little extra spike. And then 3k pot, you always want to save for that once you one of your build. Finish all your items. Really strong. And that's going to do it for our auto tag hunters. Went on a little longer than I was expecting, actually. But yeah, nice and sweet there. The other hunter build is a bit more of a niche hunter build, the ability hunter build. There are a number of hunters that can use this build very well. And those would be Newt, Muzen Cobb. Artemis can kind of use this. I wouldn't recommend it. Chiron uses it very well. Martichoras, one of the mainstays. Medusa can use this build very well. Neith can use this build, but I'd recommend just not playing Neith in general. Skadi can use this build. And Ullr is very, very good with this build. And he will be the character we'll be using to put in the God Builder here. So here's the build. Little flashbang for you. It's going to go Bluestone, Jotun's Trans Fail Not for max CDR and a lot of power. And then we're going to get some 2 of 3 action, kind of like the last build where you pick 2 out of the 3. So a little difference between what you'd normally see in past seasons for the ability hunter build here. You may notice we're rushing the Jotun's Wrath. Typically, in the past, you've seen people rush the Transcendence. With the changes Season 11 brought, with stacking being a lot easier, you can just deal damage to get stacks. Rushing Jotuns becomes a lot more attractive. Also, because we switched to the Jade Corruption map for Joust this season, and just getting pressure early and often is ideal. It always is in Joust, but even more so with more farm to contest. And the Meteor, that gosh darn hecking Meteor, actually throws some serious spanners in the works, guys. You want to get every single piece of farm that you can get, because you will get a lead, and you will get it quickly, and you will win fights. So having cooldown and early pen on a cheap item is ideal for that scenario. And that's why we rush Jotuns instead of Transcendence. So your start is Bluestone, T1 Jotuns, and then you get 2 of each health multi. You're getting a blue buff, so your mana isn't that big a deal, but unlike the ADC the auto attack hunter build, you are clearing manually with abilities on these characters, so it is nice to have a little bit more mana sustain, and that's why we buy 2 multis instead of 3 health, 1 multi. If you are feeling real uncomfortable, like you're just an ability spammer, like player, like that's just how you work, you could buy mana pots. It's not the worst thing. But I'd say you should work to try to get to the point where you're building multi-pots. If you really need to, you could even be the guy that takes the blue buff. Because you are an ability hunter. You are going to be trading back and forth the enemy a bit with your abilities. So having that extra mana sustain passive from the blue buff by hitting enemy gods and getting mana refund is nice to have. Especially on someone like Ullr. So yeah, the rest of the build is going to look like we talked about, you're just going to finish the Jotuns first. Then you're going to go into Transcendence. You could buy Fail Not second here if you really like just want to go for like a full snowball build. But the most consistent thing you can do is this Transcendence. It's going to give you, like 70 power going into the late game. And almost infinite mana. On Ullr, you might still run out of mana just because he's Ullr. And then you want to get Fail Not to cap your CDR. On Ullr specifically, there is an argument to go Hydras here instead of Fail Not. Much cheaper item to go Hydras. But the difference here, and I've done the math, going to be the cooldown, right? So, pros of Hydras, more infinite mana, much more noticeable for Ullr. This is kind of like an Ullr only argument, by the way. Like everyone else just goes Fail Not. But Ullr in particular, there is an argument to go Hydras. He uses the passive super well. He needs the mana more than all of them. And it's just like really good consistent damage for him on that Hydras. But the difference that you're going to run into is the Fail Not 10% CDR here is going to give you 1.4 extra seconds of cooldown. So running that through the calculator real fast, Ullr has base 14-second cooldowns, right? So if we do 14 times 0.6, which is max CDR, 60% cooldowns, you have 8.4-second cooldowns. 14 times 0.7, which is 30% CDR. You have 9.8-second cooldowns. So your cooldowns are 1.4 seconds longer. 8.4 versus 9.8. If you go Hydras over Fail Not, which is almost 1.5 Ullr passive procs, which is what makes his character so strong. And so like 1.4 seconds could very much be the difference between you living and you dying because you can't like jump out of a fight, or getting a kill, like you can't 3 them in time before they get their mobility ability up. Like, it is very, very impactful to miss that extra 10% CDR from the Fail Not over the Hydras. So I pretty much always say go Fail Not. But if that mana from the Hydras is that important to you, having that consistent damage is that important to you, feel free to go the Hydras. If you really like that cheapness, that is a big difference, 350 gold. I do find Fail Not to be just a little bit stronger because of the right word for this? The reasons I just stated. That's what I'm going to go with. But yeah, like I said, Hydra's still good. You could go either one. It's like very minute differences. The damage from both of them is going to even out a little bit because you get consistent damage from Hydras, whereas if you get a crit from Fail Not, it's going to be better. And your teammates can crit too. And your Vulcan turret can crit. Dude. Fail Not. Okay. Yeah. But enough of that. So you're just going to choose either that or that. And then you're going to build Titan's Bane Heartseeker. Crusher is pretty much out of the meta right now. Item is kind of dookie. The damage is very bad. And Titan's Bane, especially with the buff it just got a few packs ago now, is just better. 5-second cooldown on each of those. You got Ullr 3s. I was playing him the other day. I got hyper late game with a 3k pot. And my 3, just the actual damage from the 3, I hit a squishy for 712. That's not counting the Heartseeker proc that hit for 126. Or the Bluestone that would have hit for like 200 if the guy didn't die. So, yeah. Titan's Bane procs are very, very strong. Make your abilities hit quite hard. And that is why this is the build right now. And then you, of course, will go Bluestone Brooch. Man, I forgot to talk about the upgraded starters, didn't I? You guys will figure it out. A Bluestone Brooch is the call here. You prioritize Bluestone Brooch over pretty much any other item in this build. So like you get to this point of the build where you're about to finish Heartseeker, but you could also finish Bluestone, you do that. You get to this point in the build, you've got like a T2 Titans to a T3 Titans, you get the Bluestone over the Titans. It is the item. He's that guy. Bluestone Brooch, that is how you deal your damage. Bluestone, Titan's Bane, Heartseeker. Those are your damage items. Everything else is just do that more often and hit it a little harder. That is what you rely on. And yep, this build is a lot simpler. There are no like real caveats or changes you make. The biggest thing was that Hydras versus Fail Not argument. I'd say the only other thing we could talk about, I guess, is you could switch up a little bit here, and instead of going Fail Not, if you are just prioritizing tank shred, you could just grab a Titan's Bane here. Probably the only change you would make. So, like, let's say you're against like Achilles and Bacchus in the front line. Fail Not's probably not offering you very much at this stage because they're just so naturally tanky. So you could just throw a Titan's Bane here and say, screw it, I don't need the cooldown yet. We'll delay it and get Titan's Bane. And another thing you could do is that little 500 pot spike that we were talking about with the 80 or the auto tech ADC build. You just throw that in there somewhere because this is where you become real strong. 3-item point, like you're finishing your transcendence, you're getting a heavy percent pen. You can just like make that spike just abuse a little harder and grab a 500 pot type of thing. Just get as much burst as possible. Other than that, the build is pretty standard. And that's how we're going to run it. Now, the only thing to talk about are some relics. The classic beads Aegis. And then with the ability hunter in particular, Blink is a very strong relic to go. It's like on Ullr, Marty, Medusa, like you can just jump a backliner with Blink. You will have to forego likely your Aegis, so it will make it a little trickier to survive in some scenarios, which is why it's up to you and how the game is going, which relics you choose. Beads Aegis always being the safer option, but if you do want to be that playmaker, and if it is preferred for the game, like closing that gap and getting like a surprise 50% HP burst onto a carry would just win you fights, and you're not too worried about not having the Aegis for the Bacchus ult or for the Achilles ult, like go for it. By all means. Like especially on Ullr, who's already so mobile and can avoid those tanks on his own a lot of the time, the Blink does gain a lot of value. And then of course, as we talked about with the other ADCs, you could just mix around to like a Med. You're an ability hunter. Med does go very well with you. Upgrading your relics manually to T2 and then just stacking them off of your Bluestone procs is a very popular strategy for these guys. Well, I shouldn't say popular, but it's a very valid strategy. And it's so easy for them to stack from T2 to 3 without spending that 500 gold. And using that with a relic like Med is very good. Using that with a relic like Thunder, it's really good. Like there are very number of relics in here that you could build on these ADCs that do much better at rank 3 than they do at rank 2 or rank 1. So Sunder and Med are probably the biggest abusers for that. I guess you could go Divine Barrier if you really wanted. I wouldn't advise it. You could do it for Bracer as well. Or you manually upgrade to tier 2 and then don't spend the 500 and just get those god hits with Bluestone procs to stack it up quickly to tier 3. You can go a lot of different relics on the ability hunters and make things happen. Just depends on how you're feeling. If you really feel like you don't need the Aegis and you can drop it for a situational guy here that will give you a stronger fight. Or if you just want to play it safe and go Beads Aegis every game, it works just as well a lot of the time. So, yeah. And I think that's the Hunter class. I'm going to take a look at the chat over here. Got real into it. See what I missed. Why is Leather Cowl so popular now with ADCs? You feel like people didn't build it much last season and usually went one of the arrow variants. Maybe that was the case early on in the season. But Leather Cowl last season, I think early last season, got a significant buff to Leader's Cowl that made Leader's Cowl very popular. Leader's Cowl is the better of the cowls, for sure. And so you pretty much always build Leader's Cowl if you play it in Joust. But it's just really good power. And probably, arguably, the best early game that you can get. Because it gives you 20% possible attack speed. In Joust, you're basically like always next to your teammates, right? So you're pretty much always getting the attack speed passive from Leather Cowl. Versus in Conquest, where like your support leaves you, and then you're getting the 5% movement speed, which is, you know, arguably much worse than having the 10% attack speed. So you're going to get 20% attack speed, 15 power, just a little chunk of lifesteal, which is nice, and a little chunk of MP5, which is nice. Nothing to write home about, for sure, but it's something. But it's mainly for that early game potential. Gilded Arrow offers basically nothing in the early game. You're playing for level 20 spike if you go Gilded Arrow. Death's Toll is actually pretty similar strength to Leather Cowl. It's just you don't have attack speed, so it does feel a little bit awkward. The sustain, though, from Death's Toll is incredible. You're playing like X-Ball, I would recommend going Death's Toll every freaking game. And then the Death's Temper upgrade makes a lot more sense than the Leather Cowl Leader's Cowl upgrade does in Joust, because for a number of reasons. One, Joust only has 3 people on your team. So immediately you're getting less value from Leader's Cowl there. Death's Temper, you're still getting the maximum Death's Temper value. And then 2 is you're giving Leader's Cowl, you're giving extra power to your 2 tanks. They're getting like 10 power out of that, at best. So you're really only benefiting yourself. Death's Temper, it's completely selfish. Feels great for you. Your auto attacks will slam them. So I think actually that Death's Toll is a very underutilized starter item right now. Leather Cowl is very good, but Death's Toll actually does have 3 more power, 18, and has like basically infinite sustain, little bits of survivability. The big difference between these starters, I would say, is that sustain though, because Leader's Cowl gives you the 15% lifesteal and gives you a little bit more power than Death's Temper, so that is kind of the only argument in my eyes over why you'd go Cowl over Death's Toll in the late game. And then, of course, like we talked about early, like the 20% attack speed is just sick from Leather Cowl versus Death's Toll, which gives none. My DPI and in-game sensitivity anywhere? I think I'm on 1200 DPI and in-game sensitivity. I want to say it's 8. 9. I think it's supposed to be 8, but it's 9. What's up, Mithril? I'm still a new player. You love seeing me like this. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I think that's everything, guys. We talked about Ability Hunter. We talked about Auto Attack Hunter. We did it. Congratulations. You know how to build hunters now. Quite a simple class, relatively, in terms of the variety of builds. And that makes it nicer, yet also more annoying. It's just about figuring out maximizing the order that you want it, and knowing like which starter you want, and just getting really in tune with your spikes, and knowing when you're strong enough to run the game, and knowing what glyphs to buy, blah 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 blah, knowing when to buy potions, when you can swap out Aegis for a different relic, and it's just, you just got to play them. The nice thing is the builds aren't going to change very much. You just need to know like what order to do it in, and just feel out the characters that you're playing so that you can do it as best as possible. And if you can maximize that, then you'll have a great time playing the Hunter class. So unless I missed any other questions, let's wrap it up here. You found that you like Mannequin on Ishtar just for early game camp and wave clear. Oh yeah, Mannequin is kind of a interesting starter right now, but I don't think it's super prevalent in Joust, so we didn't talk about that. Gilded on Soul, yeah, it's really good on her. Like, magical ADCs are a different beast entirely. But we'll get to that in the mage video, which could be the next one. You guys let me know. We've done warriors, now we've done hunters. So if you made it this far in the video, wow, you watched the whole thing, you guys are crazy. Or you just randomly skipped to this point in the video. Fantastic. Thank you guys for watching the hunter building video today. Hope you learned something. Maybe you learned a lot. In fact, that'd be great. Let me know in the comments section down below which class you'd like me to do next. Like I said, we've done warriors, and now we've finished hunters. So assassins, guardians, or mages. All of them significantly more tricky to build than the hunter class, because there's a bit more in terms of variety to do. But I am curious to know what you guys think, what you guys want. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the channel for more. It has been Cosmos, How to Build Hunters in Joust, Season 11. I'll see ya in the next one.